Hey, everybody. Welcome to Spider's Sound Off. I am Tom, and with me is a 6', 6" opinion producing Porter.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here. And thank you, Spider Nation, for tuning in to our first ever episode of Spider Sound Off.
Well, maybe some of you heard our teaser, but today we're going to do some more, talk about ourselves. Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? Why would you want to listen to us every week?
That's a good question.
Throughout the season. And we're here together in Richmond, Virginia, in our Henrico studios. It's about 90 degrees outside, so we're nice and comfortable inside.
It's about 84 inside, but
it's not that bad. Porter and I have known each other for kind of over 30 years. We graduated in the last season that Dick Tarrant was our coach, so we're kind of kids of Dick Tarrant over our 4 years. We were roommates after college. Porter recently moved to Richmond and gave us this crazy idea of doing a podcast and having other people care about our opinions.
I spent 30 years away from Richmond, and I married a West Hampton college girl. And I made the promise when we moved away that we would be back in Richmond in 5 years. And it took us 25 years for me to uphold that promise. But we did come back. We raised our kids in Northern Virginia. That doesn't mean I wasn't tuned in at every chance to Spider basketball. I was. But I came back to Richmond with the goal of really being in a place where my wife and I both felt like home. Our kids are grown up. They've moved on. But we're back and loving it so far.
Well, and DC's not bad either because you got GW, you've got George Mason, so you've got some A10 talk.
We do,
up there.
And I can tell you about a couple of experiences as we go on during the season where I believe personally that I cost George Washington at least 1 point over the years, screaming at their kid shooting free throws in a game in that little bandbox of a gym they have up there. So we'll tell that story too.
Yeah, well, I've been in Richmond really since graduation, outside of a couple of years where I was in Northern Virginia and got to live with Porter. I was a season ticket holder back in the Dooley days, then had kids, and this was the era before people figured out you could put headphones on little babies and they could still go to loud basketball games. So for a few years we dropped out as we had kids and they were too young and couldn't take all the noise. We did come back. Pretty much every coach we've had I've seen live. Had that luxury, I think, going from the old student section, which I think was section 8 when we went there. Then was in section 4 as a season ticket holder, pre-kids. Eventually worked our way around. Now we're in section 5. So you'll see Porter, myself, and our wives, hopefully, throughout the season for both men's and women's.
Yeah, I'll tell you too. I knew I was going to be a season ticket holder for the men when I came back last year. That was a done deal. I mean, I've been a men's Spider fan. It's been in my blood since, I came to college in 1989. What I wasn't anticipating was how much love I found for the women's game. I got season tickets last year because I knew I had Sundays free, and I was like, I'm going to go to the games. It took all of about 10 minutes of watching our women play to realize this team is a legit team that could contend for a top 20 spot. I think I called you up that same day and said, "Hey Tom, this is a top 20 team we have. You got to join me at these games." And you did. And so I think part of our rationale for doing the podcast now is to help bring some attention to the women's program because it is so darn good, and we definitely need and want all of the Spider basketball fans that are out there to come out and support the Lady Spiders as well as you do the men. I know it's easy to say it, but I will tell you, you will not have any regrets this year, especially. This is going to be a special team for the women. The value of the ticket, I will also add, is probably the best value in the city of Richmond. I mean, I think I factored in after my season tickets that I was spending about $1 an hour to be at the game, maybe $1.50 an hour. And for the kind of entertainment those ladies provide, there's nothing better in the city of Richmond. So
it was even more valuable that I just use one of your season tickets most of the time.
Yes,
So
that is true.
that made
Yeah,
it
you
great
made
for
it
me.
free. But I mean, here's the thing, guys. And gals. It is going to be an epic season for the ladies. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx anything, but if you followed the lady program last year, you saw us win our first ever NCAA tournament game. If you followed us during the summer, you see, 3 or 4 of our players going out and playing in a USA 3-on-3 tournament, holding their own, losing to the eventual champion after advancing against some very good teams. So the ladies are legit. We have a very possibly one, maybe 2 future WNBA players on the team right now. So if you don't, use your time to come out and support these ladies, you're doing yourself a disservice. They are really, really good.
Now, as one of my kids said when they heard I was doing this podcast, that the first reply was, "Well, everyone does a podcast." And one of the things we noted when we were thinking about this is not the first Richmond Spider basketball podcast. We do want to recognize there's been a couple others out there. One from a former student
Noah Goldberg, yeah.
who did it during his 4 years at U of R, and he was kind of an ESPN insider as well.
And thank you, Noah, for your hard work.
And I think Nick Sherrod, I think, kind of co-hosted a lot of that.
We're standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. We recognize that a lot of good work went in, and it helped us kind of prepare for this. So,
and we also can't forget the Frontline Fanatics podcast. They had a great run as well. So thank you guys for supporting the Richmond basketball program and helping promote it really through the pre and a little bit post COVID years.
And so we thank those guys.
Now, it may be hard for you to imagine since we're over 5 minutes into the podcast, but our intent is to keep all of these under 30 minutes. But we will have a few more podcasts between now and when the season starts, and really hoping to elevate the programs the best we can. And you'll hear it many times, like we want your feedback. So however you're listening to this, there should be a way to comment. We have Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter, X, whatever you call it now. But we want to hear from you. Kind of what do you want to hear about?
I have a lot of good friends, all Spider grads, that have weighed in already about episode ideas, and they've put some really good information in front of us. Because we want to keep it under 30 minutes, we're going to try to be tight on a topic or two. When we get into the season, as Tom says, we're going to get much more into statistics, games, strategy, things like that. But for our first episode, we just thought we'd kind of introduce you. We both graduated in 1993, as Tom mentioned. Tell you a little bit about what some of our favorite memories are, talk a little bit about, what our goals for the program should be and what we think they should be. And then ultimately, leave you on the first episode with maybe some questions to think about. And then as we get into episodes 2, 3, 4, and 5, you'll hear us go into things like women's roster, men's roster, recruits, transfers, news, Kenny Atkinson's Coach of the Year award, things like that. So we'll hit all that stuff. But for this first episode, we're keeping it tight. Figured we'd just introduce ourselves, tell you what the catalyst for doing this was, and maybe take you through some of our favorite memories.
Yeah, so let's go right there and talk about, at least while we were in school, kind of our favorite memories, and I'll start, and then we can talk about after school, since we don't want this podcast just to be about the good old days.
Before you get into your favorite memory, let me ask you a question. So I seem to recall back when we were in school. Of course, this was pre-internet, folks. So we're kind of dinosaurs in that aspect, and the TV station had like 12 channels, not like 700 that exist today. But to go to a Richmond basketball game, it was like the event around campus. And so, you had to go really, really early just to get a seat, because oftentimes, fraternities would send their pledges out and reserve whole rows for the fraternity. But it was a big deal. I mean, it's just to get there early enough so you had a seat for the game.
Yeah. And as I said before, I think we were in section 8. It was it was on the side, kind of almost in the corner.
Yeah.
Unlike today, where the students are kind of behind the basket. But yeah, it was an event.
Kind of behind where the visitors' bench is today.
There was, before we went there, the Spider basketball team had great success in the mid '80s.
Yeah.
I think most students who liked sports, when they came to U of R, kind of already knew basketball was the sport. We also had a football field that was off campus, so basketball was the one thing that you could kind of walk to That was an event back then.
100%.
And our freshman year, Kenny Atkinson took our team to the tournament. So very early on, we had success. Kind of my favorite memory is this our sophomore year, the kind of 90-91 season. It was kind of a magical season for a bunch of reasons. We played, and it's hard to imagine these days, but back then we used to get ACC teams that came to the Robins Center. We played Georgia Tech.
Bobby Cremens.
Yeah. We played Georgia Tech. Kenny Anderson was their starting point guard. He was one of the best guards in the country. He could really do it all. We played them tight. I think that we called a timeout late. The ball game was tied. We then had a timeout and a play called, I think, for Curtis Blair to take a shot, and he missed the shot. Jim Springer.
Which was unusual because Curtis didn't miss a lot.
Yeah, that's right. And Jim Springer is kind of a power forward, a great player for us. Got the rebound on his way, kind of falling after that rebound, threw it up, and it went in kind of right at the buzzer. That place went crazy. That was the only time during my 4 years that I stormed the court with a bunch of people. Maybe it happened the next 2 years, but it may have been the only time of my entire 4 years that there was a court storming in the Robins Center.
What was Georgia Tech ranked? Do you remember?
They were top 20, 16, maybe 14.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
I remember the game. I don't know if I can't remember if I stormed the court or not.
So that was a heck of a memory. I think the court storming is the main thing, and it was rare then. I think today you see it on SportsCenter every day, it seems, during the basketball season. But that was a big moment for me. It kind of I think kind of solidified that this was the team I was going to follow for a long time. Porter, how about you?
I mean, for me, it was hard to top the win against Syracuse, and anybody who was at Richmond during those years recalls at that point in time, a 15 had never beaten a 2. I mean, everybody now remembers where the first 15 never beat a 2, but it was leading up to that too. I mean, Richmond was we started slow that year. We kind of picked up steam as the year went on. We knew we could hang with the best teams because we had that key win against Georgia Tech, but it was I think it was interesting because down the stretch we started to play a lot better. Then we got into the CAA tournament at the time. We ended up with 3 tough games. Jim Shields, which by the way we called him Jim the Hammer Shields. I don't know, was that our friend group that created the Hammer, or was that his actual nickname?
I have no idea.
Well, anyway, Jim,
if
you're listening to this, we'd love to have you on. I think this is the 35th anniversary of the of that team. Well, anyway, we called him the
That's
Hammer.
Some good math, Porter.
Yeah, we called him the Hammer, and he had a CAA tournament for the ages. Was the MVP of that. Just played his butt off. Helped us get to the game against Syracuse. And then I personally will tell you my memory, I was actually in Florida. It was spring break at Richmond, mid-March. I had gone with some friends down to Captiva Island. We were hanging out trying to figure out how to watch the game. Back then, there weren't 1,000 channels where every game was on. You got whoever CBS put on in that region, and it wasn't the Spider game. So we were watching the other game, keeping our eye on the score at the bottom of the screen. And eventually, CBS realized history was being made. They cut over to the Spider game. We got to watch the last 10 minutes of it and watch us beat Syracuse, Billy Owens, in a game we never trailed. They never had the lead, which, was history being made. I remember Vern Lundquist signed off with the phrase, something to the effect of, he gave the final score, and then he said, it'll be a score we never forget, or something like that. And true to that, like every year it's listed as the one of the best upsets in NCAA history because it was that first 15 that beat it too. And we could talk for hours about this game. I mean, I have all kinds of questions that I would love to talk to Dick Tarrant about. Like, how did he know that Eugene Burroughs should come in at the 129 mark, after having only played 5 minutes in the entire game? He's a freshman guard. You put him on the floor. Of course, Syracuse down 1 is going to foul him. But the kid never even wavered on his 2 shots. I mean, it was 2 of the sweetest free throws you'll ever see in your life. How did Tarrant know that was the guy? I mean, he only had 14 free throws all regular season. I mean, just unbelievable coaching.
We played Temple in the second round. Is that right? We lost to Temple.
Yeah, and they rolled us pretty good. But it was, most of us were just still in shock over the Syracuse win.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
How about since? kind of what memory, your best memory since we've been there?
I think in 2011, the Sweet 16 team. I mean, if you guys remember, we beat Vandy in the first round, and then played Morehead State in the second round, and we really crushed Morehead State. I mean, we were the better team through and through, and it felt for me like the Richmond program I think we all are aspiring to be, where like not only do we get to the tournament, but we win a game and we feel like we should win more than one game, right? And so for me, that Morehead State game was kind of the pinnacle of where I think we should strive to be every single year.
Yeah, and don't forget too. I mean, when we beat Vanderbilt, there was a group of us, Porter and I, as and friends of ours, were in Vegas, so we got to watch that game kind of together, enjoy that together. So that helps that memory a lot. For me, 1998 when we went to an NCAA tournament with Beeline,
Yes.
when we played South Carolina
In DC.
in DC, so I got to go to that game.
Me too.
Had the luxury of worked for Capital One back then, so there was a Capital One suite just filled with U of R grads who worked for Capital One.
Love it.
And so we had a good time enjoying the suite.
Thanks for the invite, by the way.
And then being there. And that was a game where South Carolina had the ball down one with a chance to win. So it was like down to the wire. Thankfully, they missed that shot. And that was Beeline's first year, too. He took kind of an underachieving group that were mostly seniors and turned that into one of our great teams. We were 14 seed. To beat number 3 seed. We lost that next round to Washington, who had some giant
7-foot center.
McCullough was his name. He was like 7.
Yeah.
He was a
7'2"?
giant.
Was he 7'2"? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
no, it might have been 8.
Big.
He might have been 8 feet tall. But yeah, he was a giant.
By the way, on that South Carolina game, I was at that game too, and my memory after the game was I had a work call that I had before the game started down in DC, so I was in a nice olive suit. It was kind of a newer suit. And I loved that suit. And I don't remember who it was, but there was a Spider crazy in full red and blue body paint. And we were running around the concourse screaming after the win. And he saw me from about 50 yards and I saw him and we pointed at each other and he came and gave me the giant chest bump. And I took that red and blue paint on my green suit and wore it the rest of the day. It was pretty bad.
I'm guessing it made that suit look better.
You know what? I didn't even care. It was such an exciting
Was it double-breasted?
I was not double-breasted.
It was
No,
not.
I wasn't a double-breasted sort of suit guy, but yeah, it was a special moment for sure.
Well, hey, one of the things we've been talking about kind of off the mic, but I think is worth talking about here is like where do we see our programs going, and not just looking at this season. We'll have plenty of time to talk about this season, but we've got a long history with the men's team, kind of a newer history for us as kind of going to games in the Robins Center, being a season ticket holder on the women's team. But the women's, while they had a great year last year, that was their, I think, 5th time in the NCAA tournament. So it wasn't kind of the first time it's ever happened. So there's a question for both of those programs, like what are the goals that we think those programs should have? Porter, I know that you're probably a little more ambitious than me. So where's your perspective on what we should be as fans? Like, what should we be thinking the goals are for kind of our basketball programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think, basketball is the flagship sport at Richmond. And that's just not us saying it. That's the administration basically putting some weight behind it. My opinion is, I mean, I ran sales teams for large technology companies for my career, and I mean, I'm always set a smart goal, but at the same time, you should have an audacious goal that's a stretch goal. And I don't ever believe in limiting the potential of anybody, any program, anyone, because you really can achieve anything. I believe that you ultimately set your mind to with enough work, enough effort, enough planning and tactical inputs going into it. So my goal for both programs would be to see us win a national championship while you and I are still alive, which for you will be longer than me because you're in great shape. And, I don't know how many 6'6" guys that live at like 80, but there's not a lot of us. So I've got limited time, Spider fans and Mr. Hart. So, let's shoot for the next 25 years. Let's try to win a national title. I know you probably think I'm too ambitious, but that would be my goal.
I would say ridiculous.
Okay. That's fair.
But I appreciate the enthusiasm. I look at really our our city neighbor school, as much as
They who shall not be named.
yeah, as much as we like to dream about beating them, and as much as we don't, at least on the men's side, like I do appreciate kind of what that program looks like on the men's side, where they are kind of every year competing for the A10 title. Every year, thinking, having goals to make it to the NCAA tournament and advance, and they're doing that year in and year out. And so when I look at really both programs in the long term, like I want to be competitive every year. I want to have a chance to win the A10. Know that we don't have to win 5 games to win the A10 tournament. Get one of those buys. Sometimes the A10 will have a good year and we'll have multiple teams. Sometimes we won't, and that's not under our control. But when I look at these programs, I think that needs to be the goal, to make it to the tournament, make it to postseason every year. And I say postseason because maybe I'm too much of a realist. I don't, we're not going to make the NCAA tournament every year. You can say that, but it's just it's just not reality. But I look back, I'll kind of go back into the Dick Tarrant years. I was looking at Curtis Blair, if you all remember Curtis, now the big NBA referee. He went to NIT twice and the NCAA tournament twice. So all 4 years, he really led or co-led our team to a postseason tournament. And NIT meant more back then than it does now. But anyway, that's what I look at for the men's program. And I think, while the women's program, obviously this year has the goal can be huge. I think if you're looking at long term, it's how do we make sure every year we're competing for our conference? We feel like we're going to make the NCAA tournament, and then let's see what happens when we get there.
That you bring up a great point, and I forgot that we went to NRT or better all 4 years. Curtis was there. Curtis and Kenny Wood were 2 of the finest Spider players that we had, and I don't want to put a bug out into the ethosphere, but Curtis really should be hanging from the rafters in the Robins Center. He was that good. But let me give you a couple thoughts to challenge you on this. If you watch that women's game against UCLA, we played the number 1 team in the nation in the round of 32. A bad draw for sure for a team as good as we had. We were leading at halftime, I believe, maybe by a point, against Lauren Betts, who's one of the biggest, baddest players in the country, if not the biggest. She'll probably be the number 1 pick in the NBA, in the WNBA draft. And we weren't that far away. We had a bad third quarter. I mean, we missed some threes, a lot of threes, but came back, and I think we outscored them in the fourth quarter. So I feel like the women's team last year was really 1 quarter away from being a Final Four team. That's a hot take, but that's what I believe. I'll also say this, I don't believe in impossibilities. Like if you, and I think I've hit you with this before, but I'm gonna hit it with you on the air now. So, the first guy that ran a 4-minute mile didn't do it until 1954. So in the history of humankind, I don't know how many tens of thousands of years people have been around, but nobody ran a 4-minute mile until 1954. Then Roger Bannister does it, right? The next person to do it ran it, and it was May of 1954. Roger Bannister did it. The next guy who did it in June 1954, 1 month later. Once you overcome something, it becomes amazing to see how the next person can do it, because now you have the power of belief. Let me give you one other data point to consider. Who was Gonzaga men's basketball in 1994? Do you know?
I mean, the university existed, but I'm not sure they had done much in college basketball.
They had a little bit of success. They were a regional power, but they were, nobody on nobody's national radar for sure. And then all of a sudden, Mark Few takes over, and I think it was 99. Since Mark Few has taken over, and this is not a major conference team. This is that they were they're in the WCC now. I don't know if they were back then, but they're in the WCC now. Since Few, they've had 13 Sweet 16s. 13 Sweet 16s. They've had the 2021 season where they finished 31-0. Were the overall number 1 ranked team going into the tournaments, and then lost. I think it was in the Final Four that year, or maybe it was the final game. But there's an example of a team that came from nowhere, a mid-major team where they said it was impossible, and is now, I would consider it a top 10 program in America. So I know it's a long shot goal, and I'm not saying the men's team this year is going to be. Nobody's saying we're a Final Four team this year. I mean, I think we could be in the tournament. We'll talk about that as we get into the roster episode and then the schedule episode. But we are not, we're not there yet. Nor is probably the women's team. I mean, we could, make some noise. We could be a Final Four team this year. I don't know if I'm willing to say we're the number one team in the nation. We're not. But
yeah, I joke with Porter is like I think we want to get Tony Dobbins on this episode at some point, not Tony Robbins.
There you go. Nice pull.
But I think we're both
Tony Dobbins, one of my all-time favorite defensive players.
We
by the way,
remember the Kansas game.
Oh my goodness.
But I do think, like as Porter said, we'll talk a lot more about this upcoming season. I appreciate the ambitious goal. I will maybe just wrap up that segment that says, how many NCAA championships does Gonzaga have?
Yeah, they have 0.
So they have 0.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we need to wrap this thing up. We don't want to keep you guys too long. We already talked about where we're headed. I think we're hoping to get to some practices as they wrap up their summer practice. So after we get to see the team a little bit, we'll kind of give you some updates on the
both
men's
teams.
and
Both
women's
teams.
roster.
Yeah. I've got some good advanced stats. So I think we're going to do an episode, though, before we get into the roster episodes, which probably won't be until August. I think what we'll do, because we would like to see them before we comment on them. I think what we'll do is we'll do a news and notes episode because I want to talk a little bit about some of the transfers coming in. I think you'll handle the men's transfers. I'll talk about the women's transfers, just to give a little taste to get the fans excited, because I do think there's some hidden value here that we should discuss.
Well, I hope you guys appreciated some of our trip down memory lane. Yeah, so we'll do a little of that, but it's not going to be the theme of our entire podcast. But anyway, until next time, this is Tom.
And this is Porter.
Hey, please follow, subscribe, whatever your service allows you to do, and we will check you next time.
Thanks, guys.